then companies will suffer or organizations suffers. But what does adaptability mean? This information is out there, but I think we take it for granted because as senior leaders, we know it already. We know what being adaptable means. So we say, go out there and things are changing, go do it. But some people actually struggle in those things. So these are some of the topics that our airmen needs to discuss. We also, conflict management. We know as leaders, that's something that we need to have. But how do you address conflicts in the work center? Where do you start? What about understanding people's personality traits, their decision-making abilities, empathy, compassion, emotional intelligence? You can't solve conflicts unless you understand those other components. So what is the basic levels? What are the advanced levels to these things? And how do we get after it? Also, you got leadership different styles, micromanagement. How do you deal with micromanagement with a leader, as a leader? Empathy, stress management. You cannot help others unless you understand how to address stress, empathy. I will tell you that as a young NCO, young airman, young middle manager, that I had zero empathy, none. And I've talked to my airmen constantly and said, you want to know something? I was part of the problem and I wasn't a part of the solution because I had no empathy. You showed up for work late, you got in trouble. I didn't even take the time to figure out why the person was being late. But guess what I did? I lost credibility at that moment. Our airmen are out there, our leaders are out there losing credibility because they wasn't taught how. But how do you get after that? It has to be taught. Coaching has to be taught. Leadership has to be taught. It's a journey. All of these skills is a journey. It's not a sprint. I didn't just have an epiphany and one day wake up where I'm at. I had people behind me teaching me these things. And until we do, we're part of the problem. We're not part of the solution. But I believe that these classes are necessary here on Edwards, here wherever our audience is listening, they're needed there. Because we're expecting you to come in and have all of this, that you know how to solve conflicts within the work center, that you understand empathy, that you have high emotional intelligence, that you know how to effectively communicate, that you know how to simply write or use the keyboard to help your leaders, to help your bosses, but they're lost. So I think some of these will help. I think they can be broken down into two different areas. What certifications do our personnel needs? What's the ingredients of those components? And then on the other side, what are those soft skills that we tend to lose sight of and that we take for granted because we know it, we don't even think about what our airmen and what our civilian or what our officers need to grow. So I know I've talked a lot, but I'll open it up. What I would like to do is, Cap, on our way over here, you was talking about what our defenders needed. Can you highlight that for a second?
So it elaborates on the chief's point a little bit that a lot of these basic skills that come naturally to a lot of folks don't come naturally to a lot of our people. We're a very large, just focusing on our career field for a moment, we're the largest enlisted force in the Air Force. And with that comes a very diverse range of people, backgrounds, education levels. We have people who barely graduated high school, but we've also got enlisted members who have doctorates, who have master's degrees, who have bachelor's degrees right out of the gate. And so in addition to a lot of the skills that the chief mentioned that are lacking, typing skills, basic grammar, a big thing that I see a lot is not being able to differentiate between a proper noun and a noun. We overcapitalize stuff a lot in a lot of our works. But going along with the bigger problem that we see, particularly from folks who entered the military right out of high school, is test-taking capability, the ability to study. Because whether you're working a gate, working a patrol, you're in our 911 center, you're doing something that's law enforcement related here on Edwards, at the plant, really anywhere you are in the Air Force, we make sure that you know your job before we certify you to do it. Carrying a gun, same concept. We make sure that you're certified to do it. And with that, we see a lot of failures. We see a lot of people who don't meet the criteria. And when we dig down into it, I personally meet with every single person in our squadron who fails, whether it be a job qualification test, a weapons firing test, to talk about the reasons why they failed. What did you do wrong, but also what did the system do wrong? And a lot of the issues that I see are, I thought I was studying the right material, I thought I was retaining it, but when I sat down to test, I didn't retain it. I wasn't studying the right thing. I wasn't focusing on the material that I needed to. But then also in the test taking itself, I choked up. I locked up. I second-guessed myself on a multiple choice question. Something that somebody with a more advanced degree, those skills kind of get learned, come naturally to them. A lot of folks haven't learned it. And so I've seen across the military, other installations, some of them have test-taking courses, study-taking courses. And so I don't know if any of your organizations offer something like that, but I think that that's something that we could benefit from significantly here. And I'm sure it's not something that's unique to our career field. I'm sure that maintenance has a problem with that too. I see Major Moyer in the back nodding that's something that they face in their careers as well.
So I will say, and to caveat on that, no matter if you're military, no matter if you're civilian, no matter if you're in the civilian sector, you all have to test. There's certifications in other job qualifications that you're required to do annually or semi-annually. But people have anxiety. So, and they fail because they didn't concentrate on a piece of information. And I think also they're struggling because they don't know themselves yet. They don't know how to study. They don't know themselves well enough to say, well, I get distracted by this, so maybe I need to push away the cell phone. I need to stop doing this. I need to concentrate on this certification. And we see failures all the time. And I'm sure across the Air Force, there's a problem with anxiety. There's a problem with stress. I hate tests personally, right? But again, it's a part of life. It's a part of your work centers. But maybe they're failing because they don't know how. So I agree with you, Cap. It's very, very important. What do you have, Senior?
I think that as we've had these conversations, we primarily focus on the military civilian organization and structure. Is that better? You got me now? Is that better? There you go. As we talk about setting up our military and civilians within the test wing and the DoD for success, I will be remiss if I don't just touch on the fact that as you guys invest in the test wing and invest in the DoD, you have the opportunity to touch the spouses of all the members of the test wing and bring those same certifications. So when you're investing in the test wing, you're also investing in those families who are investing back in the community locally, right? And growing that skill set and teaching the members all of the things that Chief and the Captain have talked about, you inevitably increase family communication, you increase organization communication, and again, just providing coaching certifications, critical thinking, effective communication certifications and classes to the wing. You're going to keep that family situation a little bit more. You know, if Staff Sergeant Tab had better communication classes as a staff sergeant, I probably would have been a better husband, which would have made me a better supervisor, right? So those things go hand in hand, and again, just increasing the level of thinking and efficiency of the organization. You know, Amazon, a lot of Fortune 500 companies spend a lot of money on coaching and mentorship. We need to teach. We talk about our junior folks within the enterprise, but even from our senior folks, seniors, chiefs, colonels, right? we need to teach followership, because sometimes, you know, we promote up to a point and we feel we arrived and we're in charge. Well, but we forget, like, we still following a person too. There's somebody above us all the time. And if we don't teach those good followership skills, we might invest all the money down at the tactical level and getting our workforce trained up. But if we don't train our leaders how to lead effectively in 2023, or in our case, for our next war in 2025, 2030, then we're already behind the power curve. So we need those courses that teach conflict management and prepare us for the next thing that we're going to have to do as a force. And you know, and I think those things will help us be better off as a test wing.
So when we're thinking of education, again, the one thing that you're going to find is that what our strategic leaders is not something that the frontline supervisor is going to need, right? The things that our middle managers need is not the same things that our strategic managers lead. So I would challenge you to think about the 101s versus 201s versus 301s when you're thinking about those things, when you're thinking about those courses to bring bear, because this is not something easy. And I think Eric brings up a good point. The one thing you cannot leave out is that demographic of dependence. When we're thinking of our airmen, our NCOs, our senior NCOs, our officers, our civilians, but we also forget about the dependence piece, right? So again, when you're completing that course or you're bringing up that course, who can come to it? Who's it for? What objectives is it intended for, at what level? But also just look at making sure that we continue to evolve it. Before I open up with questions, I'll also leave you guys with this. What we tend to do is we bring up courses, but we don't evaluate them, we don't monitor them. We don't see that times are changing. Again, adaptability and making sure that we are consistently monitoring and taking the feedback from these courses to make them better. So I would challenge you that even though if you do establish a course for personnel, monitor them, gain that feedback, and continually to develop it, because again, those classes, the needs from the airmen, the civilians, the officers are gonna always change. So continue to monitor them. Don't check the box, but come back and say, how can we keep making this class better? So what questions do you guys have?
Great case for the kind of hard skills and soft skills that you need and can fill in around to make them a more well-rounded type person. But I'd like to talk about process for a second.
Okay.
So we can provide the class. In fact, we have a keyboarding class.
Mm-hmm.
Can you provide the 35 students? And how? What does that look like? Are you going to be taking these classes online? Are we going to be providing them here? How do we get students enrolled? How do we get the information out there? We've got a speech class scheduled at Desert High School right now starts in March, and there's 0 students enrolled.
Mm-hmm.
So we are absolutely willing on our side. We've got a whole catalog full of classes, and as Dr. Hancock said, we can totally build a variety of different classes on a variety of different levels, including non-credit classes, which are absolutely free to students. But how do we get? This is where we sort of have stubbed our toe. How do we get students in the classes?
So
and maybe that's a question for you, of course. Maybe it's a question more for the major and others in terms of in terms of the process.
So when I was a career assistance advisor and I started doing professional development classes for personnel there and even bringing up new topics, 5 gears, emotional intelligence, everything, I only got 5 people in the class to the point where I would have to cancel them. But I was advertising the classes as well, which brings up to your piece that most likely you're advertising it, but how do you get after it? I think what it is a hybrid format. what we have to use is we have to leverage the technology that we have available to us. The reason why only 5 people were showing up to the class is some of them couldn't come in person. They had to go to work, they had family issues, whatever the case may be, but they wanted to go. But then you had some people that preferred to be in person, but the classes were only virtual. And they said, I don't learn by being on a computer screen where I have to type in the question and I have to wait for the instructor to maybe see the answer or the question to answer. We have to leverage technology. You're going to have it in person, but how do you do virtual? And I will say that I had a civilian onboarding course at Joint Base San Antonio. The course was in person. I'm gonna say I had about 50 people show up to the class. Then COVID hit. When COVID hit, it changed all of our minds. Well, now I still had the in-person class. Well, how many people registered for the course? 3. Because now they were used to the virtual platform. But I still had people that said, well, I'm not coming to it if it's virtual. I need to be in the classroom. I need to learn from that. But what I did is I had the hybrid class. I opened it up through Zoom. We had 200 seats available on Zoom, but we had the in-person seats as well. I had the classes full, and then we had all 200 virtual seats filled, but we had a waiting list on Zoom for 150 people. So are we leveraging the technology and are we utilizing a hybrid? I will tell you, when I look at job fairs, career fairs, they're going to a hybrid format because some people want the in-person, some people don't. I think also your question is, how do you fill it all up? Sometimes you're just not gonna fill it all up. Sometimes you're only gonna have 15 people. But the virtual, if you definitely have that, I guarantee you when people are able to use their cell phones and sit in the work center and still be able to hear the class and take it and sign up and register, those are gonna be your numbers. And it's gonna fluctuate, sir. But I think the hybrid format is something you have to think about. If it's in a classroom environment, having the camera right there for the teacher, but at the same time, you do have the seats available for in-person. You may only have 3 people sitting in the room with you, but you'll have 200 people online. Sometimes it's gonna fluctuate like that.
Great, thank you. And just
Yes, sir.
how does a member of your unit know that these classes are available?
Go ahead.
We over communicate opportunities. That's one thing about Chief and myself. We believe in education, so we advocate. We believe in education. We believe in education. Advocate that. Chief himself sends out a pamphlet of opportunities, and it's a big portion is education, a big portion is life stuff, finance stuff. So, and that's usually a chain of command issue. So I would tell you, right, as you guys formulate what your options are, what you want to offer. One, if it was me, I would probably have like, hey, this is what I'm gonna offer this year, just as a minimum. Like, this is my baseline, what I'm gonna offer. And I would probably shoot that to FSS, to Major Moyer, Sergeant Cox. And then, you have your, hey, if I don't have this, whatever your quote is, so, because again, it's a business, you're trying to break even at a minimum, I would assume. So if your minimum is 5, if you don't have those 5, 60 days out, you just say, hey, Major, I'm not going to have this course. But once Major Moyer and Sergeant Cox get it, I know 99% of the time what they usually do, that goes out to the SELs, the chiefs, it goes out to the commanders, so they're pushing that stuff down to their units. So the information is always flowing. Along with it going down to the chiefs and the commanders, then it's going to Sergeant Cox, who's sending it out to everybody else that's not a chief or a commander. So you having 3 or 4 points of contact all the time with the courses you're offering. So it's not a question of if it's getting out. It's just if the people are receptive to it, right? And then demographics when it comes to in person. Usually the captain's not as old as Chief and I, but Chief or people my age, we're probably more inclined to come to an in-person class. That's what the statistics say. And then the folks younger than us, younger than the captain, they're probably more inclined to want to be on their cell phone so they can try to multitask and pass the class and do whatever they're doing, like via electronically. It's no different than when we have a commander call, or not a commander's call, those are usually in person. But even the general, he has a commander's call, it's in person for everybody that's here, it's virtual for everybody else. So he got 200 people sitting in the auditorium with him, he got 1,000 people virtually kind of quasi paying attention and doing things, and you guys know that. So I think it's kind of a combination, like you said, you need to kind of plan it out and have a little bit of flexibility with us, and with in mind that usually what I've seen in my year in the 412 test wing is that a lot of folks, they live in anywhere from Tehachapi to downtown LA, so it's hard to find a median to where everybody says, okay, that's close enough, I'm going to come, because it's never going to be close enough for everybody. So even with that, you're still probably looking at that 15 to 20 people in person, but that virtual option with the demographic of the folks that would attend, that probably be pretty great in my estimation.
I will also say this. This is the issue that I see, and I did this with the Education Center at a few of my last spaces. The flyers do not help. They're a waste of paper. And I want to look at it from a different perspective. When you hand somebody the flyer, how long are they going to maintain it? How long are they going to keep it before it goes into the trash can? Also, the one thing about the flyers that they currently stand, it does not communicate why I should take the course. It literally tells me what the course is, how much it costs, what the location is, and it's got a pretty picture behind it. How does that tell me it's of value to me? We're missing the synopsis. We're missing the piece that I need to take this course. Why? If you do not tell us why we value it, why we need to take the course, then there's no reason why. In that flyer, you just wasted money doing all of those things. Do I suggest that you get away from the flyers per se? No. But I would say, and this is what my airmen talk about all the time, if you attach an email, people love attachments. They absolutely love them. They're going to open it just to see what it looks like. That attachment needs to be substantial. Put all of your classes on there. Put what the synopsis and why it's valued under every single one. One flyer tell us everything. Do not send our airmen or our leaders 15 different attachments and say, open them all up and see if you want to go. One attachment, put the synopsis, tell us why it's of value. If not, your flyers are going in the trash can. It's as simple as that. If you tell us, if you put a picture behind it, if you tell us the title, if you tell us how much it's going to cost, if you tell us to reach out to the POC at the bottom, we're going to ignore it. Why? You have not addressed why it's of value to me. Why do I need this? Well, you need to take this course to get certified because it's going to be $150,000 annually on the outside world. Oh, I need to go to this. I'm a log in virtually. Somehow, some way, I need to take this course. Why does the speech class matter? If it's not of value to us, then we're not going to take it. That's just another class that we just need to go to. So the recommendation is tell us why it's valuable to us. Put it on the flyer. At the same time, I would recommend slimming down the attachments and use one. If you are a college and you have multiple courses, put 5 of them on there. Tell us why it's of value. Put contact information at the bottom and send it out. Like what Eric said, for me, I'm a huge advocate of you guys' education programs. I send it out once a month to everyone, every single time. But the one thing that we get feedback from our airmen, from our leaders is, well, why do I need to take it? I would get away from one flyer, one class, and post it.
Don't underestimate the word of mouth either. We had a class a couple of months ago that I signed up for it, but then some other stuff popped up on my calendar. I just kind of signed up for the class to get out of the office for a day. But when other things popped up, I didn't have much information on the class. I prioritized those meetings over going to the class, we had 8 seats in it, and it was an LA County Sheriff's course that they came on site to do for us, and they said, hey, we can take as many people as you can fit in the room. They still came up and did it, even though we only had 8 people sitting there. But afterwards, everybody who came out of the class said, wow, I have so many new tools for, it was focused on responding to like domestics, personal crises, stuff like that. They said it was fantastic. I feel a lot more comfortable going to one of those 911 calls now. And so now me going forward, next time I see that calendar pop up, next time I see it pop up on the calendar, I'm going to prioritize it differently. And I've heard the same from a lot of the other people too. They shared that feedback, and now we're reaching out to LA County saying, hey, I know we didn't do so well last time, but I can promise you now that 35 people for the next time that you come.
And I will offer this, being able to have some flexibility, and I know it's normal nature, it's school, right? Most classes are Monday through Friday business hours, but a good portion of the test wing demographic work shift work. And it's very tough to bring folks out of a shift work schedule to say, hey, this class is at 12 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the afternoon. You're used to getting up at 6 o'clock at night. So I know most teachers are not going to want to teach a class at 6 o'clock at night, but if we can have some weekend options sometimes, that will likely increase your participation. You know, so as you ask us or the DOD, the test wing, to be flexible, you will likely get because even our industry folks that are likely our mission partners, they're in shift work. So your pool of people that's going to participate in class, if it kind of aligns with a shift work schedule, and most of the emergency responders within the test wing have a similar shift work schedule to where probably chief can work with the med group chief and CE to get folks targeted for whatever classes you have offering at that time. But it's very difficult to take those folks because it becomes a mission stoppage at a certain point to get everybody released to go do a class, and then they're just not inclined to do it. And then, I would also say for senior folks, senior leaders, it's almost impossible to get a chief, a major, a colonel out of the office for 8 hours for a class. So as you tailor classes, when you're targeting, if you want senior folks to go, bandwidth, you're probably talking 4 hours tops. Because if we stay gone for more than 4 hours, it becomes pretty intense to catch up.
Awesome. Great ideas.
So time for one more.
I think as leaders, we bear some of the responsibility as well for defining what is required or what would be beneficial to the people who work underneath us and the people who are in our organization. And I think one of the things that we need to do as leaders on the Air Force side is we need to do a better job of defining to their junior force personnel what are these courses and how are they going to be beneficial to these people's careers, and help Kern County Community College District and Saracosta College in identifying what classes are the ones that are going to be beneficial to our junior force, and so that they can go about and offer those courses to the junior force. I think you made some great points earlier about some of the courses, some of the basic skills that were needed, but I think we shouldn't overlook the responsibility that we have as leaders to help define what are the courses and what the value is of those courses to the junior force.
Yes, sir. I will just say this. I think when we're thinking about what's of value, you have to do a needs analysis. You have to coordinate it and everything with the senior leaders, the general, the chief, everyone on base, and you have to figure out what do they care about. You have to do that. You can't go out and make classes like what the gentleman said. You can't just create classes if there's no need for them. So the thing about it is, before you go out and you create these classes, is there a genuine need? But you have to rely on data. Do you have the data? So I agree with you 100%, but we just have to figure out what is the need of the population.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
So just just want to thank you for being here today. Give you guys a good handshake, and then you have successfully led them to the lunch hour.
Okay.
So that's exciting. So, but I think it's a great talking point, and if you'd like to bend their ear or talk to them anymore, they'll be available at lunchtime. So we'll cut off on virtual land. We get to go on that, and then for those that are here, Ms. Keisha will help you guys get over to the club and get your meal and then go from there. And we'll be back at 1300 stock on the maintenance portfolio. So, all righty.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
I'm actually transitioning right now after 24 years and some change of active duty service. The new group superintendent or senior enlisted leader is Chief Master Sergeant Joseph Holcroft. Thank you for coming. Who's first time on Edwards? What'd you think? It's huge, isn't it? So I joined, 1998, aircraft mechanic, crew chief. Spent 8 years on C-130s. Spent 7.5 years on Air Force One, so I spent a lot of time in DC. Worked at a data mass location on prototypes for 5 years, Whiteman Air Force Base, and then here. Believe it or not, I volunteered to come here. Why? Because if you're in aviation, the Antelope Valley is where you want to be. Between Mojave Air and Space, Edwards, Plant 42, everything happens here, right? Being in the sea for a year and 9 months, that's where we're struggling. And the entire valley's struggling for this. It's the human aspect. So we have just shy of 1,900, well, we have 1,995 billets right now in the maintenance group. So think of 69 aircraft, 17 different MDSs, Mission Design Series aircraft, and we're authorized 1,995 people. Right now, we're actually, as of last night, 254 people short civil service. And that number keeps dropping. So we have 5 squadrons. MXS, retired chief, Mr. Dixon, 30 years. He does all your back shops. So fabrication, sheet metal, metals tech, munitions, propulsion. MXLS is very unique, so they do the verification and validation of tech data, test plans. You can see their numbers. To the right is authorized, or the left, authorized black, and in blue is what we currently have, right? MXIS is your instrumentation. It's the only base that has an instrumentation squadron, Mr. Ewert. They are all civil servants. 912th AMXS has your B1s, B52s, B2s. We're gonna get the B21 here shortly. Your KC-46, KC-135, and C-17. And your fighters is 412th AMXS. So we have the F-22s, F-35s, T-38s, F-16s. And again, we're falling short. If you go to the next slide, one more. This is our numbers over the last 2 years. If you go one more slide, ma'am. These numbers have dropped since. But 2 years ago, we were sitting almost 95%. And now we're sitting at today, as of last night, about 81% manned with civil servants. Active duty is okay because we keep getting those bodies, right, through attrition. They're gonna keep coming, they're gonna keep going. We rely on continuity, right? We need subject matter experts. And our civilians are those people. 2 years ago, at 95% manned, I can guarantee you, we had anywhere between 20 and 40 years experience for each person, right? Has everybody heard about the HPO, the high performing organization? So our numbers, we were 2/3 active duty prior to 2005, 1/3 civil service. We flipped. We figured, oh, we'll go civil service, we'll keep continuity. Well, we're coming up on that crutch where in the next 2 years, we're gonna have 500 more people retirement eligible. And so we're slowly hemorrhaging, and it makes me nervous because we're bringing on new platforms. We're building up our hypersonics, you know, and yet I need bodies to come here, but so doesn't the rest of the base. And so when I look at you all, I talk to your friends, your students, right? Civil service is a great way to go. I did government contracting for a while. Yes, contractors pay more money, but civil service is more stability. They have a pension. It's not as easily to get fired from civil service. And so if 9/11 didn't teach us anything, because that was my 3-year mark and I thought about getting out, being an aircraft mechanic, when I watched all the commercial airlines go belly up because people were afraid to get on airlines, I was like, I'll do 6 more. We'll see what happens. and 6 turned into 24 like that, right? Joe and I, Chief Holcroft and I, go to newcomers every 2 weeks, and we onboard new people. I'd say 99% of the people we hire are local. And so when I look at the state representatives, right, why? Why isn't the Aerospace Valley or Antelope Valley the place that everybody wants to come to, right? Taxes are high. That's okay. People pay more here. There's locality pays. Schools are not that great around here for if you have families. Crime is super high. So it's very hard to get someone from Las Vegas, which actually crime rates are lower, but it's a tax-free state, Texas, Florida, and all these people that, for me, retiring, it's very hard for me to say, I'm going to promise you I'm going to stay in California. Why? Because you're going to tax my retirement pay, and you're going to tax my next paycheck. Oh, and then I'm going to raise my family, and we have people traveling from Pasadena, Victorville, Bakersfield, Barstow, California City, and they're driving an hour and a half one way to come to this base, and they're turning around after their 12-hour day and driving another hour and a half out. And so people want to be here, but we have to get bodies in the door. And with 500 more retirement eligible people in the next 2 years, there's going to be a lot of career progression, right? A lot of those people I talked about that have been here a long time are getting ready to retire. The number 2's got to move up to number 1, the 3's the number 2's. And so starting in, and there's great stories here of people that come in at a low pay wage and work their way up. Mr. Ewert, if you go back to the first slide, has been here 37 years. He was active duty, got out, and now he's in charge. He's an NH4 of MXIS. And so at some point in the next few years, he's probably going to retire, and someone's going to slide up, and it's going to keep going. So there is a lot of jobs here in the maintenance group, but I would say as an advocate for the test wing, there is a lot of opportunities for people. They just don't know that it's here. You know, you drive past the base, and you can't even see in, you know, it's so far out you can't see the inside of the base, right? So for your first time here, it's huge. But yeah, for us, any degree, no degree. If you look at an Air Force installation, it's like a mini city. If you want to be in law enforcement, we have law enforcement. We have people working in the hospital that are civil servants. We have people in the dental clinic as civil servants. I'm sure CE has already come. CE, you want to dig ditches, lay asphalt, work on buildings and facilities. We have it here. So it's a mini city, except it's behind the fence line where it's actually safe to work, and you're guaranteed a job, right? And the way, if you look at the charts, you're guaranteed to be moved up as long as you have a solid work ethic, you have a good attitude, you're going to keep getting promoted. You got anything else, Chief Holcroft? Any questions for me at all? I love it here. I do. You know, being a baby airman, a young man, it was a dream to come out here. Once I heard about what Plant 42 did and coming TDY to Edwards, we do everything. It's so cool. It hurts me and pains me to leave, but I have to do it in the best interest of my 4 ladies. I got 3 daughters and a wife. And they're at the point now where we keep moving. It's putting a strain on different educations in different states and trying to meet new friends. So that's where I hand it off to Chief Holcroft. But
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
In areas where you have declining personnel, are there particular areas, 1 or 2 areas in particular, where you are finding that you're not being able to fill that gap?
So bombers, as of literally, our hypersonics are being flown on B-52s, right? They're old, aging aircraft, right? And we keep modernizing them. We're going to put new engines on them one day. We're going to put new radars on them, and we're going to fly hypersonics on them. We are currently. They're shy about 45 to 50 people out of 135 authorized. And so A&P background would be great. Propulsion, if you have any engine experience, that's a leg up on anybody. But most of our jobs, if you come in, we're going to send you to tech school. And they're going to get trained up just like I did at a high school, right? If you want to be a business manager, right, there's opportunities, RAs, resource advisors that deal with money, financial advisors for the commander. So there's a lot of opportunities. And for us, maintenance group, if you have a background in logistics, we have logisticians, they're NH4s, but underneath one of the director of logistics is logisticians. And they do all programmatic stuff. So they're not really supervising people, but they're dealing with the program offices, higher headquarters, trying to make magic happen here on the ground, right? And we have a whole lot of logisticians under each one of these DOLs. Again, if you have engineering, STEM background degrees, TENG, if you've already talked to them, that's what they're looking for, right? So there's a lot of jobs in engineering that they need. Program managers in TMG. So it's awesome, right? You don't have to really supervise or adults, but you have a lot of responsibility when it comes to being in programs, right? Like the B-21's still not here, but there's been a lot of work for many years, people behind the scenes, and that's what they're doing. The logisticians, the loggies, MXIS is buried in there doing telemetry and all the orange wiring. MXLS is doing the validation and verification of the tech data. Usually MXLS is a subject matter expert, usually a E5 and above, or a civil servant that's been on a platform for a while will work there. But we do send people to tech school. I would say if you had a degree, you got a leg up on most logisticians. If you have an A&P or you're striving towards an A&P, then you got to shoe up in any one of these aircraft. But we will hire someone off the street, munitions right now. Whether you work at Lowe's, Home Depot, we'll send you to tech school and we'll get you to learn how to build weapons and then deliver them out to the aircraft. And so there's a lot of opportunities, right? So not just for the college students, but maybe for their siblings, right? That aren't really aspiring to be college, right? But we all know once you start going, you're gonna get more further education. Whether you want it or not, you're gonna get smarter every day. And they're gonna force you to professionally develop yourself. If you have any kind of, so it's unique with an avionics type background, wire repair, electrical background. MXIS, they are the hardware, right? They're laying all the wires, they're doing the AND gates and OR gates and resistors and the structures, but they're hand in hand with the engineering group. And so they're ones that collect all the ones and zeros, the data. They calculate it to see if the test was a good test or a bad test. So we're all working hand in hand to execute the mission. Any other questions? Sir.
Chief, I'm Kyle Fina. I'm the Deputy Director for Plans and Programs for the wing.
Yes.
First of all, thanks. I think you clearly illuminated a challenge that's about to strike hard in the Western region for all the installations, and that is we have two cohorts, and those cohorts were created by a separation of 10-year hiring freezes.
Yes.
And that complicated the issue for all the installations, I think. But here at Edwards, I'd be curious if you could talk to, and it was mentioned this morning, what can our colleges do to help with potential certifications as additives to the technical schools you're going to send folks to at least stabilize a workforce for you? This is a complex portfolio of aircraft. You have your you and your team
it
has
is,
your hands
right?
full.
Cyber certs for 5th and 6th gen aircraft will probably help to get them in there. Again, the soldering classes, the wiring, small engines, vocational schools, right? Any of that will get, not saying that you won't get a job, but it'll give you a leg up on someone that's not going coming off the street out of the unemployment line or Lowe's or Home Depot. Not saying that they're not great human beings and they can't learn, but we go back, and this is something I would love to do. I'm just running out of time. We'll get your test done in 3 months. Legitimately, it's going to take longer. We'll still be successful. It's just going to take a lot longer to execute, right? And that's not going to make a lot of people happy. Here, right? And so I think that would be a bonus. You come work here, we'll help you get your A&P. It takes 18 months for one, but if you want both, you need about 36 months hands-on experience with engines, avionics, airframe. And this is going to sound bad. Part of it, and I have 3 girls, work ethic goes a long way, attitude. Those are things you can't really instill in young minds, right? Want to strive to do better tomorrow than you do today. Those are things that I'm seeing now is struggling. Hey, you're going to work in the elements. We have hangars and they're cool, but eventually you're going to be outside for heat, long periods of time. It's going to get cold here in the high desert. You can't teach that, right? We'll take anybody and make something out of them, but it's going to take a lot on their own, and that's, you do a great job educating. Coping mechanisms. Growing up, we learned how to write checks. The other day, we were sitting in a CSS, had a check, and had an airman look at it and go, "Can you fill that out?" No. Doesn't need to, right? But there are some things that we can't teach, but I would say life is tough, right? And I'm trying to do that with a 13, 11, and 3-year-old. And how do we get them to where they cope through some of these stressors, right? There's a lot of mental health issues in the country right now, but part of it is they don't know how to cope through struggles. Their heart pounds, they get nervous, and it's an issue, or it's just stress, right? Normal work-related stress. And it's tough being in all your seats right now because you're developing the next one of us, right? Or the next General Hager, right? I would keep pushing them to be better, right? Get through school and not just let them slide through school. So you're giving them that after high school, they're hitting college, and it's the real deal. And if we give them a break in college, and then we give them a break, and we see it with the young airmen, we give them a break in basic training, and then they get to tech school, we get a break, and then we get someone broken when they get here. Like, it's hard because 90% of our time as chiefs is dealing with 10% of the populace. It's the troubled people getting in trouble. I would say if they want to work at Edwards, start teaching them in college what not to do as a young adult. Get arrested, do drugs, touch someone that doesn't want to be touched, because once they get jaded, they're never going to get a security clearance. So what they're doing at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, 22 years old is going to affect them forever. And that wasn't briefed to us until they said, "Hey, you're sitting down, you need a top secret clearance. What have you done in your entire life?" Oh, how many speeding tickets have you gotten? Have you ever done drugs? Have you ever drinking underage? And it's stuff that kids are going to do in college, but what they don't understand is if they want to work the B-21 bomber, they need a top secret clearance with an SCI. And if they screw up in college, they may never, ever, 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 ever have that opportunity. Social media. Great, right? If it's real news. But you have too many friends that are foreign nationals in social media, you're probably not going to get a security clearance. And it's things that now you can teach someone right out of high school is what you do now is going to affect you later. And that's some of our struggles we have here is we need a lot of people to get briefed into some things. And what they were doing before they came in and as young lieutenants or young airmen is catching up to them because they were never briefed. They were never educated on the proper way to be a good human being or staying out of trouble or skirting the edge of, okay, I might get in trouble, but I'm probably not going to get in trouble. California, it's hard because guess what's legalized? Marijuana, right? A lot of states. Guess what? That may affect your security clearance later on. I have to brief airmen when you go out to a restaurant, make sure you read the menu because now drinks are infused with it. I got an airman coming back and they have a urinalysis on Monday and I lose them the very next day because California is infusing CBD into drinks. And so these are things I have to educate because I need to keep everybody that comes under this base and keep them here. What other questions do you have? I know I'm not helping, but I think with everybody here, we've all have life experiences, right? And to push that, be personable with your students and have the professors be personable with their students. Mom and dad, a lot of kids don't listen to, but aunts and uncles or their friends or maybe a professor, right? I have Mr. Krause in high school that I still write a Christmas card every Christmas to. That was my high school teacher. Why? Because he put a little bit more effort into me than most because he knew I needed a different direction than I was going down. And that stayed with me forever because I just wasn't a student in his eye. I was a human that needed some direction, right? And I think if we can do that, if the grade schools could do that, but if they miss that mark, at least the colleges can do it. Any other questions? It's tough being a chief, right? It's tough looking at numbers like that or dealing with 695 issues every day, but we love it. We keep doing it, right? Why? Because we know one day our time's gonna run out. And God forbid my daughter or son, I don't have a son, probably won't, but one of my 3 daughters joins or goes to college and then decides to go be a civil servant or a contractor. I hope someone that I'm affecting now will affect them later on, right? And I think that's huge when it comes to education and children, young minds.
You said some schools better than none, and some will stand out. So what about just a very basic smattering of you said vocational trade type skills, little electronics, little welding, little. Is that good? Does that put
no, it is. It is. So if you go to fabrication, they're bending metal, right? They're cutting metal. They're checking diameters. They're checking tensile strength, stress. You go to propulsions, they're working on engines. But if you have some kind of theory, system knowledge, and experience, is better than none, right? On how a jet engine works or reciprocating engine, even a small engine, you can kind of relate to a jet engine, right? The concepts. You give them anything is more than coming right out of high school, right? I would say another thing I see people struggling with right now is there a transition for college students getting ready to go to the workforce? Do they know how to write? Do they know how to do a resume? Do they know what to put on a resume? Do they understand how to talk like this? Can they sit and do an interview? Because I did 8 interviews the other day and 6 flopped and they were my age. They couldn't look anybody in the eye. They were nervous. They dressed like bums. And they had no substance behind any answer. And so when I seen it with my little brother-in-laws. I love them to death, but they're about 20 years younger than me, and they were leaving Georgetown and George Washington. And my father-in-law and I practiced doing interviews. Why? Because we're in an age where they ask someone out on a date through their phone, right? Or they talk and they, right? And so that's another thing, a transition period, just like I do in the military. I'm transitioning, and this is all I know for 24 years. So I'm getting ready to jump out into something I have no idea about, and they're going to take their time to transition me into a civilian. And so what are we doing in the universities to transition students to the real world? What kind of skills are we giving them to be successful during their first interview? Are they applying for the right jobs? The career counselors, when they come in and say, hey, you want to take a degree in basket weaving, super easy. Is that going to get them the good paying jobs that they want when they get out of college, right? Or are they going to resent the university? Because the universities are what? They're recruiting the next generation. So if you can have someone leave happy, they're going to tell their friends, their kids, and say, hey, and I'm an alum here. I want you to go to this school. It's what you do in that short amount of time is going to affect them, and they're going to be recruits for whatever university they go to. That's kind of what we try to do in the military, right? It's just a different, we're asking them for a 4 or 6 or a lifetime. Any other questions? No, I appreciate everybody coming. I know the wing will invite you back anytime you want. Maybe next time you get a tour and actually check out some of the cool things here, what we're doing, maybe open it up to the students. Like I said, it is a small city, and no matter what your students want to do, we have it here. And we actually mentor. We actually care about human beings. We ask them how their days are. Why? Because we're nonprofit. When they go to the contractors, all they care about is producing. Don't care if you had a bad day or you didn't get sleep because of your kids. You're going to produce 8, 12, 16-hour days. And if you can't, we're going to let you go. And that doesn't happen on base here. And so that's probably the one thing I'm going to miss when I retire is that community feel. Someone always looking out after you, making sure you're doing okay, right? And so do that in the universities and colleges. They're just not a number. They're not just a tuition. Good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I'll be in the back with Chief until 3.
All right, and next up we have our very own from EWGA, Mr. Gunther. Take it away, sir.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. So my name is Jeff Gunther. I'm the Deputy Director for the 445th Test Squadron, and I'm a little bit of a late entry into this event, so I don't have any slides, and I'll just be talking to you and winging it a little bit, but hopefully I'll convey some useful information to you and whoever we have watching on YouTube. So what we do in the 445th, we're a new squadron. We just stood up last June. Before that, we were a division under the Electronic Warfare Group. And the purpose of our squadron at this point is to, we're rolling out or fielding a capability called the Joint Simulation Environment. And we are fielding that capability into what we call a digital test and training range. And we actually have 2 of those digital test and training ranges. We have one here at Edwards Air Force Base. We have another one at Nellis Air Force Base near Las Vegas. What we do with the simulation environments and the training ranges, if you imagine what the Air Force Test Center does as a business, right? We have open air ranges. On those open air ranges, we do all kinds of different flight tests, right? Those ranges have capabilities on them. Capabilities include just physical space to fly aircraft in. There's traffic in those ranges. There are assets on the ground. There's telemetry for the aircraft. And there are limitations with all of that, right? So in the open air, there's only so much room, right? And in modern warfare, there's a lot of aircraft operating at a given time. So on our open air ranges, it's difficult to get just the basic room that you need to execute flight test. It's difficult to get the density that you need of the platforms and threat systems, friendly systems, right? All of the other aircraft that are flying in that environment is limited of what you can do open air. The number of aircraft that you have available to the maintenance group that was just speaking, right? There's a limited number of aircraft that are ready to fly or available within the squadrons here to put in the air. So if you want high densities, that's difficult to get. All of the platforms that you would need. You know, if you want F-22s and F-35s and you want to do some interoperability kind of testing, it's difficult to get all of that in the air at the same time. There are security constraints on the open air ranges, right? There's things you can and can't do. Different times of the day, you're being observed by different organizations potentially, and you may not want to put everything out in the open air. So there's a lot of limitations that you have on the open air ranges. So the purpose of the digital test and training range is to take the ranges, the physical capabilities that you would have to do flight tests, put that all into a digital environment, right? And that digital environment is the joint simulation environment. That's the technical capability that we're putting into our ranges to enable the digital component of that range. The original joint simulation environment was to support F-35. That's currently running at Pax River in Maryland. It's a Navy program that's running that. They provide the foundation of the software that we are fielding into our ranges at Edwards and Nellis. So we currently have an enterprise that goes across both the Navy and the Air Force to implement all of that software, put all the technology together, and then field that into our ranges here at Edwards and Nellis. The end goal of that, end goal is probably the wrong term, but the purpose of our simulation environment is really to do mission systems level testing. We can also do more flight sciences and that kind of thing, but the primary purpose of our sim, the JSE, is to do mission systems testing, right? So the way that the electronics on board the aircraft work and how they function within the physics of the world, right? So in the JSE, we're modeling at a physics level to provide RF and IR interactions of how an actual aircraft and how its OFP would interact in the real world. And the primary aircraft that we're after are the more advanced planes, 5th gen and 6th gen aircraft. So to implement all of that, obviously very technically oriented jobs, right? A lot of computer science, a lot of engineering, a lot of system administration. Some of the specific roles that we're looking for in that are Linux and Windows system administration, and the cybersecurity that goes along with all of that, right? So certifications that would help with that are DoD 8570. For those that aren't familiar with that, those would be things like Security Plus certifications. CISSP is a certification that would drive towards that. Basically, a large computing environment. In that computing environment, you need a lot of system administrators to run all of that, and they have to be able to keep everything up at the security levels that the Department of Defense requires. And those certifications are what are required as an entry into those jobs, right? If you don't have those certifications, by regulation, you can't hold those jobs. So Security Plus, CISSP, there are several other certifications that will get you to that. But those are some of the primary ones, and if you wanted to know what the other certifications are, the regulation is DoD 8570, and you can look that up on the internet, and it'll show you all the certifications that are required for different levels of administration capabilities. Also required in the DoD 8570 is the OS certification. So if you're going to be a Linux administrator, you would need a Linux cert. If you're a Windows administrator, you need Windows certifications, and a computer science or computer information systems degree is very valuable for those kind of roles. It's not always entirely required. If you have the certifications, you might be able to get away without the degree in some of those positions, but definitely it's strongly desired to have a degree in those. We're going to be hiring a lot of programmers across that joint simulation environment enterprise. It's going to require a very large number of programmers, let's just say that. The programming, like I said, it's very technical programming, right? So it's not so much like business systems kind of programming, it's modeling and simulation type programming. But if you don't have a modeling and simulation background, don't let that keep you from applying, right? You very well may be able to get in, but if you're looking at how to develop yourself specifically for jobs that would be in our area, it would be a modeling and simulation type of background. Like I said, the environment is physics-based, right? So understanding physics, understanding the math behind the physics, and being able to code that and put that into computer systems, understand how that interacts with aircraft and weapons. All of that is of high value. Languages, C, C++, Python. On the programmer side, definitely do get to where you're preferring the computer science degrees. Said the M&S knowledge. Along with that, methodologies, agile development methodologies, DevOps, DevSecOps, how to integrate continuous delivery of software over time, Those are definitely significant skills that we're looking for out of our programming staff. And then engineering. Engineering is always a tough position to fill for, right? Lots of different kinds of engineering. In our case, we're looking for electronic warfare type engineers. So people that are knowledgeable RF and IR spectrum, electronic warfare systems, weapon systems, avionics. All of those kinds of skill sets are things in hot demand in the JSE world. So engineering positions definitely require a degree, right? And that needs to be an ABET accredited engineering degree. So that'll lead you in the right direction on that. And then some other type of skill sets include cloud knowledge, right? A lot of the systems today are still not cloud-based, but we're moving towards cloud-based systems. And that is definitely a significant change in the way that we do our computing architectures. So things in the cloud world, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, all those kinds of things are useful skill sets. And then going forward, machine learning, artificial intelligence. I know those are the kind of the key skills that everybody's looking for nowadays, but we're all trying to make our systems smarter and more intelligent. So along those lines, people that can bring machine learning or AI skills are definitely going to be in demand in our kind of a environment. We already talked about cybersecurity, and then I think the last skill set I'll hit on is model-based systems engineering. We're definitely trying to, so everything we're doing, right, digital test and training range. If you look at the Air Force level acquisitions direction, we're moving in a digital engineering kind of a world, right? We want to model things before we bend steel. We want to know how they're going to work before we actually build them in the physical world. And then we want to verify and validate that they work in the digital world, flying less sorties than maybe we would have had to in the past to verify and validate those kinds of things. So model-based systems engineering, definitely a skill set we're after. Cameo is a tool that we use in that. SysML is a system modeling language that we would use for that. But just basic digital engineering concepts, system engineering concepts are all going to be in high demand in our area. So with that, I will open up to questions. Yes, Mr. Lockwood.
Hey, Jeff, I'm on your team. So I don't necessarily have questions, but I wanted to add a couple things along the engineering side. Aerospace engineers, because what we're doing in that environment is we're flying with man-in-the-loop simulators that are also interacting with constructively modeled entities, right? So not necessarily gamers, but those type of people that are interested in flying aircraft or flying with pilots or interfacing with pilots. Our aero engineers are a natural fit along with this electrical, IR and RF engineering type degrees. We have to stitch a lot of models together. I was double checking my notes. So in our org chart, we have a lot of systems engineering going on. You mentioned model-based systems engineering. That's going to be huge. So we have operators. Our operators have to interface with our pilots and our engineers to also operate modeling systems that are bringing into these constructive entities. So when I'm saying I don't necessarily want gamers, it's those type of people that want to, fly in this digital arena that'll naturally fit in with this type of space and interface with customers. Also in our org chart, you mentioned system administrators. Linux is a huge thing, which you mentioned. Linux certifications along with Windows. We also have technicians. The chief was talking about technicians, and a lot of the technicians that we apply in our case are heavily detailed networks, switches, kernels, RAID drives. So when we're looking at technician types, which also have fiber optic skills and wiring skills and repairing skills, because we have projectors, special systems with our image generation systems. So we gravitate to maybe some of those nerds that are Yeah, at my house, I like to build computers on my free time, you know, and they're also soldering and welding and just building things. So for where joint simulation environment is, digital test and training range, bringing that open air range into that closed environment for security reasons, that's huge in terms of adding in those additional skills that Jeffrey's already mentioned, Mr. Gunther there.
Nice ads.
So
Thank you.
Not much of a question, just a bunch of comments. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Internships.
Same as before?
So there is potential for internships. I don't think we're actively recruiting for any. Jerry, are you?
There are possibilities in 2024, maybe 2025. We're trying to set up the unclassified environment, or unclassified training environment, so that we can set up a repeatable and meaningful experience for them, so we can assess their skills and as well as assess their ability to want to thrive in this arena. So we have done some long-term internships before. We're going to kick that off in the 24 timeframe along with 25 and expand upon our, like I was mentioning before I got the microphone, expand upon our unclassified micro environment so they get a taste for what's going on in our classified environments.
Yeah, just following that up and following up what the chief said about clearances, right? Everything we do pretty much requires clearances to get through, and so we do run some internships, but like Jerry said, they're difficult, and we have to really prepare the environment to make those useful when we only have people for a couple of months at a time. So yeah, we're working on that in the long term.
One other comment, maybe, like, adding on to the chief's comments about how do you prepare yourself for life in the future. These other things is you can't assume that telework is going to be available. We have to work in highly classified environments, which means you have to be on site in vaults making this stuff happen. So if you can work on really cool things and not deal with Windows until you're done working on those really cool things and go outside and have a little break or a snack or a jog, that's the environment for you. You know? So you're not going to be sitting in open windows and staring at birds while you're getting things done.
Very true. Go ahead.
Do you offer, or do you use AutoCAD or Inventor or SolidWorks?
So we use, for the building, we use all different kinds of tools for different things, right? So in the facilities side of things, we do use AutoCAD a fair amount. Outside of the physical buildings, right? When we get into the engineering and technical side of things, it's mostly Cameo.
What's your projected time frame? You said you're building. So when are you hoping to do most of your hiring?
So we've actually done most of our hiring already. Yeah, so we have people spread out in different areas of facilities awaiting the completion of our building. Which should be coming pretty soon. We're getting close to the end of the construction phase. Be moving into those facilities pretty soon. So we're actively hiring, absolutely. Right now, if you're interested in a job, look for positions and put in a resume. Anything else? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break and then we'll finish up for today. All right, we're starting back up, and it's my esteemed pleasure to introduce Hugo Villa. Take it away.
Thank you, ma'am. So good afternoon. Again, I'm Hugo Villa. I'm the Installation Management Division Chief. I'm here to represent the 412 Civil Engineer Group. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, but mostly I'm going to tell you what we do within the group and how do we do it. So along the way, you'll see the type of professionals we hire, and what type of licenses, registrations, degrees, master's degrees, and so on. So any questions along the way, please let me know. You may have a little bit of a hard time seeing the slide. Perfect, thank you. So who I am, I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, master's degree in project management. I had 21 years military service. I'm retired military. I have 7 years federal service. I've been here since 2015. Again, civil engineer by degree. In my current job, though, I'm the Installation Management Division Chief. I manage the budget, resources, human resources, IT, support, real property, and housing for Edwards Air Force Base. But I'm also wearing a second hat, which is the Deputy Base Civil Engineer, the Acting Deputy Base Civil Engineer. As such, I help the Base Civil Engineer, Mr. James Judkins, manage the group, 412 Civil Engineer Group. We are a big group, 477 positions, civilian positions 405, 72 military. We're constantly hiring, constantly recruiting. Normally we're about 10 to 15% vacancy rate, so somewhere between 40 and 60 vacant positions at all times. So constantly recruiting from different levels, different professions. You'll see along the way, we have from engineers to budget folks to a little bit of everything. So what does the 412 Civil Engineering Group do? We we maintain, repair, and construct facilities, infrastructure along the 308,000 acres that Edwards Air Force Base has. We're the second largest installation in the Air Force. We manage over 2,470 facilities. It's 3.82 million square feet. We have hangars, we have aircraft hangars, we have industrial facilities, admin facilities, dorms for our military company airmen, and we also have 741 houses. We have lots of paved roads, 260 miles of paved roads, 270 miles of electrical lines, 205 miles of water lines, so lots of infrastructure. How do we do that? We are divided into folks who have some type of finance background, but we do have formal training for them to how do we manage the funds in the Air Force. It's very complicated in the federal government, so we do have formal training for them. I also manage the force management. Force management is the human resources, so anywhere from hiring to retiring and everything in the middle. Promotions, when we do our annual assessments and all those things. We also have the security manager piece and the training officer. Down the bottom is our recruiting / training officer. So I'll ask you if any opportunities for us to recruit students to please send me an email or Ms. Eva Sullivan an email, and we'll be there. We'll take any opportunity to recruit young professionals from different degrees. Under my purview is also the housing management of 741 houses, military houses. We oversee the management of a private company who manages those houses. Within that section, no degree requirements, we have formal training for them as well. So we'll hire out of, a little bit of college, zero college. We like them to have some type of housing, apartment complex management type of thing. We also have the dorm management. Within the dorm management, it's really more logistics because we manage the furniture. We like to have folks. We like to hire folks who understand the buildings, because they function as building managers. So we like for them to understand about a little bit of electrical systems, HVAC systems, and things like that. And then we have the real property function. Real property, we basically manage. We document everything that every facility that is infrastructure that we own, the Air Force, and that gets reported back to the big headquarters Air Force. And we also manage the licenses, the real estate instruments that we do. We have on base, we have NASA, we have FAA, we have AT&T, Verizon, many other companies that we make sure they're legally allowed to stay here. So that's what we do. In that section, we like them to have a business management degree, preferably also a Master's of Business Management, an MBA would be ideal for that position, for those positions. And finally, we have our IT, your plumbers, you have your HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning professionals. They have their, plumbers, structures, plumbers, heavy equipment operators, power production, so generators, type of things. In those sections, we like them, no specific licenses, certifications needed. We'll give them the training, but we do require 4 to 5 years experience, ideally. There's a lot of OJT on the job training, but we do mostly hire folks with a little bit of experience at least. That's what these folks do. We do have customer service there as well. So we hire folks with just a little bit of customer service. And service contracts. So service contracts, we like them to have some experience in government contracts. No degree requirements again, but having a degree is always a plus. So that's what these guys do. They do small repairs. They don't do, they do small repairs. Anything that they cannot do, it goes to here, to engineering division. But before it goes to engineering division, I like to talk about our environmental division. Our environmental folks, they keep us out of trouble. California has a lot of environmental regulations, so we have about 36 professionals in the environmental division, and we have everything from environmental engineers to physical scientists to archaeologists, and they basically make sure we're not polluting. Well, they look at the air, water pollution, pollution prevention, hazardous waste management, cultural sites. We have a lot of cultural sites here at Edwards Air Force Base. At some point, we had lakes, we had water here, so we had human beings living in this area. So there's a lot of cultural sites that we protect. And then we also have historical buildings. We work with the state historical preservation, and as well as the state and the federal, to make sure any historical building, which we do have them, we follow all the regulations. And the environmental folks make sure we're okay with all the projects that we have. So definitely they oversee a lot of what these guys do, and what these guys cannot do here, what this team cannot do, goes to engineering, all the projects by contract. A lot of our projects are done by contract because our folks are very busy maintaining, doing small repairs, preventive maintenance, so a lot of the project is done by contract. In this engineering division is where we have a lot of our degreed engineers, civil, again, mechanical, electrical, architect engineers. We, at any one point, we had at least 3 or 4 vacancies. We're constantly hiring. Now, that one has a lot of good formal training. We teach engineers how to be an engineer in the Air Force, but a better accredited engineering degrees is required. But in that division, we also have the GIS, the Geospatial Information Systems professionals. No degree required, but experience required. We also have the community planners, ideally a community planning bachelor's degree. So they manage a lot of the projects. Okay, moving on to this one. This one is the emergency responder. So they protect over 10,000 people that work and live here at Edwards Air Force Base, between civilians, 741 military families, and contractors, about 10,000 people who are regularly here on base. So they provide the fire protection, fire emergency services. We have 5 fire stations spread out throughout the base. They have about 100 firefighters. Of those, 54 are military, the rest are civilians. Those firefighters, the requirement is to have airfield firefighting. That is tough to get. Not available here locally in the Antelope Valley. Most of our civilian firefighters were actually prior military. 99% of them were prior military, because the Air Force is the only one who. Yes, I'm sorry. Question? Oh, So it's the only, the Air Force provides the appropriate training. So that's the firefighters. They're trained to provide firefighting in the aircraft as well as structure. So it's highly qualified folks. We also have the EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. All of them are military. We have about 25 slots, and they're all military. We have the civilians, emergency management, and they protect us against any hazardous waste spill or CBRNE, chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear risks. And they train all of us. They train us what to do, and they train our military folks as they're deploying as well. So they do have, ideally for that section is to have some type of emergency management bachelor's degree, which exists, or homeland security type of bachelor's degree. So that's what we do, and that's how we do it. Any questions? Sir?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. Very intriguing. I do have a couple questions, though. For your fire emergency services, do you guys also focus on like the specialized training for maybe confined space rescue or going down into like a down helicopter? How do you approach it?
Yes, confined spaces, yes. For a helicopter, I'm not sure. I know we have the training down in Texas where all our firefighters go, and is they basically teach our firefighters how to be a firefighter in the Air Force. They do the rescue in aircraft. Most firefighters are not trained for that. So our qualifications are unique. So it's really hard for a non-military, prior military member to compete well for those positions. Most of our, like I said, most of our firefighters were prior military.
So just a follow-up, just to put it on your guys' radar, that's something that we're looking at exploring right now, of getting into those specialized type of training for the safety aspect of it. The second question that I have is, I noticed, well, actually I had two more questions. The second question I had is, where is your safety program, your occupational safety and or risk management programs, and do you guys have a high demand or need for those associate level and possibly bachelor level students?
Absolutely. So we have a large safety program on base in the office, and every unit has their own safety rep. So every one of those squadrons have their own safety rep, and even farther, every section has their own safety rep. Now those safety rep within the sections are a secondary, along with that, it's like an additional duty. But we do have a full-time safety rep for the group, and every squadron has a safety rep. And it's in not only that, but a lot of the safety responsibilities is to supervisors. But we all have a very structured, very training, things that we have to do. But we do have safety reps pretty much in every.
So is that like a designation for individuals within that different section?
Correct. We do have a full-time in every squadron, but in every section we have a safety rep as an additional duty.
Got it. Thank you. We've got another one of those degrees that we could possibly be able to provide staff and workforce for you. The third question that I have, and sorry if I'm hogging the mic, but the third question is your porters. Do you have, one of the things that I've always tried to look at is how do we train our staff to become advanced? How do we get them to move up? We're working on a program that right now says we're going to take our porters, our janitorial custodial services, to put them into a program that they might be able to go into an office environment, office manager, or something of the sort where they could get, increase their skills. Do you guys have a program for your porters, or is there something that you would be interested in?
We would be interested in as well. Not a structured program. It's more based on performance, based on they apply when we have openings. There's folks who apply who went from the trades and labors to the more planning and design type of thing. But it truly has to do with their ability to communicate well, computer skills, and their capability to analyze data and communicate well.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions, Chief?
Sir,
Sir, you have 477 positions, but how many do you have vacant? And what squadrons do you have a hard time trying to fill?
Good question. So we roughly, right now, we have about 60 positions vacant, somewhere between 50 and 60 positions vacant. We're constantly hiring for electrical and mechanical engineers. We always have a hard time finding those because civil engineers do only one thing, construction design. Electrical and mechanical engineers can go into aerospace, can go into many other different things. So we have a hard time finding especially electrical engineers. So that's one major requirement. In the past, also high voltage electricians. Right now, like today, we do have high voltage electricians. We don't have very many vacancies, but that's traditionally what we have, vacancies where we have. And then emergency management. Lately, in the past year, we lost a few folks, and we're slowly filling those vacancies, but we're having, which is in this one. And electrical and mechanical engineers, we have them here and here. Environmental engineers, we've been lucky. We have good candidates, but we're always, so any type of engineering, really, is hard to fill. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for being here. And anything we can do, any opportunity we can have to go talk to your young folks or any age, but anybody who's looking for a job, please let us know. We'll be there. This is our email address, and I can share that later with you guys. All right? Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, we're prepping for the last speaker of the day. We hope that you found this information interesting and fruitful for you. And we're going to take just a short break, so if you need to stretch your legs or whatever have you, feel free. But please be back within the next 5 minutes, please. All right, see you soon.
Test engineering group covers everything from the avionics testing in the 775th. The 773rd Test Squadron covers flight sciences testing. We have the 812th Test Support Squadron, which provides education and training and other support that we need within our group. We have the Range Squadron, which runs the Ridley Control Center and all of the range out here. And then we also have the 812th Instrumentation Squadron, which works with all of the CTFs to instrument the aircraft that we'll be testing. So I got the invite yesterday with a little brief of like, come talk about ways that people can be prepared to apply for jobs. And we have a couple of hard to fill type positions. In general, the 773rd and the 775th are going to be hiring engineers, so people with engineering degrees, sometimes mathematics degrees, depending on what their interest is. The individual person, it's going to vary. Specific within the engineering fields, we typically hire aerospace engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, people out of Embry-Riddle, because we know that they have an interest in airplanes, or colleges like that. But we're open to anybody from anywhere around the country. If you have an interest in working on aircraft and working on testing our aircraft and our technology for the next generation, that's great. In the 775th, we do weapons integration testing, we do navigation, mission planning testing, we do C4ISR, so communications and data links, and we do radar and sensor fusion, and then we do electric optical IR testing. So for the EOIR positions, there's a couple of schools that now offer degrees in optical sciences. Those are people that we really try to go after for that field. So even if you don't have an optical sciences degree or an optical sciences degree, if you have taken classes in the field or something like that, those are going to be people that we really try to go after to fill those positions. So that's kind of like a niche position that we have. Another one within the 775th is our mission planners. So more than 5 years ago, most of our mission planners were retired military. So they're retired navigators, retired pilots, people who had experience in the air, on the ground, doing the actual mission planning work. So mission planning involves getting on a computer and putting all of the inputs that you're going to need to execute your flight and your mission. Everything from like the communications presets for like the radio frequencies that you're going to talk over, all of the stuff to get into a data link, your navigation, so where you're going, your route plan, if there's any weapons that are going to be dropped. You have to program all that stuff in as well. And it helped to have people who had experience in that. So former military, we really would like to recruit more of those people. With the lack of ability to do that, we've kind of transitioned, and the discipline itself has kind of evolved over time. So mission planning, way back before computers, was all done on paper. It evolved into computers. Now our mission planning testers do more of an integration test. So not only are they doing the mission plans for all of the test flights that we fly, but they're also testing the software. So they're installing it from scratch. So they need a little bit of an IT background. So what we're trying to do right now, with lack of other options, is we're taking people with an IT background and an interest in aeronautics, and we're giving them the training that they need to kind of get halfway, right? So they're not going to be the people that have been flying in the Air Force for 30 years, but maybe we can get them a pilot's license so they can understand what goes into pre-planning a flight. So that's what we have right now. If there's anybody that's coming out of college or separating from the military that has an interest in that, we would love to talk to you. Because having that military flavor and the experience, or if you have a private pilot's license, any of that stuff would be good for mission planning. Other positions that we have within the 775th, we have a couple of very IT specific positions. We have a couple of labs in the 775th Test Squadron, and we need people to manage labs. We're building a new building right now. We're not building it. Actually, we are. If you go down on the flight line on Wolf Ave, There's a big fenced off area next to 2750, which is the test center, or the 412 Test Wing headquarters. And it says Test Engineering Lab Complex. That's going to be where our new building is. So right now we're trying to provision for all of that, because about half of the building is going to be lab facility for C4ISR and EOIR. So we need people that understand, how do you build up a lab facility from scratch? How do you do all the networking, all that stuff? So we need a really good engineer, network systems engineer, something like that, who can help us with that and growing our capabilities that we have today. And the test support squadron, the A12 test support squadron, they're going to need, they have some positions that are data sciences. They do statistics support within the CTF, so they, we have people that go out and they help make sure that our test plans and test reports are statistically defensible. We have other data sciences positions. They found that people with PhDs are, they're a little bit easier to just throw in those positions and let them run. They need a little less hand-holding. Because there are so few of those positions, we don't have a large group of people available to help train those people up. So they look for the right candidate, and so recent history has shown that the PhDs have been working out successfully for that. So if anybody has been that, that's pretty much, like, I went over like the high level what we look for the disciplines that we have. The 773rd focuses more on the aerospace engineering fields, people who have the interest in how the plane flies, so like the surfaces of the plane, that's going to be the stuff that they look at. 775th is avionics, so it's what's all the electronics inside the plane. It's kind of how you can view the two. So they're going to be looking more towards the aerospace engineering graduates, people who are really interested in flying. They have a lot of people there that have their own private pilot's license. So I think that's pretty much it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Just real quick, did I understand you to say, sorry, I can feel you coming. Did I understand you to say that if someone was interested and maybe had a little flight experience or something, you might help them get their pilot's license?
So we're kind of running into roadblocks with the legalities of getting a certification. I am trying to push to get the training paid for, so help financially, and maybe get a couple of flights, but I think like that last check ride can't be funded by the government for whatever reason, at least the way I understand the laws today.
But that could be a great incentive, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone, even if they had to pay portion of it or something else had to pay for part of it, if there were individuals in certain fields, and it sounds like that could be a pretty broad background.
Yes.
Like it could be a student who has, I don't know what background, doesn't sound very specific. They could come and as part of the process, one of the incentives would be you could end up with a private pilot's license.
Yeah, so we have the airmanship program, which is like pilot's license light.
Okay.
So they do have a ground school section that's like a week of going through the basics of ground school, like were you to go through like an official pilot certification program. And then I think they have 1 or 2 flights that you can go on, like they go around the area to just kind of understand what's on the ground and help connect the pre-flight, this is what I need to do, to actual flying in the air. So that can kick off the process of getting your pilot's license. I'm looking to get a little more in depth for some of our people. But yeah, it is an opportunity potentially. I can't guarantee today that it's available. It's something that we're working towards.
All right. Just caught my ear as a recruitment thought.
Yep.
Ma'am, Chief Rachel from the maintenance group. Do you know how many positions you have vacant right now between the 2 squadrons?
I can tell you within TENG, it's about 170. So that's within all 5 squadrons.
So you have 170 vacancies, and they're very specific backgrounds. And it sounds like you were trying to get prior service military, and so you're finding other means to make that happen without having prior service.
So I will say most of the positions are not very specific. Like
Right.
an engineering degree will get you in the door for most of the positions, but yeah, for like the mission planners and the R&M positions,
Just through Q&A of people, why are you having a hard time filling that 170 positions?
I don't want to say it on the internet.
No, and I'm being honest, right? But why? Because
I mean,
we have the same struggles, right?
at a high level, specifically, why are we having problems getting former military to fill those positions? We don't know how to recruit for former military. Like, we're a mostly civilian organization. We're generally probably unaware of paths to advertise in certain channels to get the attention of former military. On an overall scale, which is I think is a test wing size scale, people either don't know about us, they don't know what we do, they don't, from a civilian side, they don't know that you can come work for the Air Force and not be a service member. They don't know that there's civilian opportunities, that you're not committing to maybe serve overseas or even like committing to the life of military. You can stay in one spot for your entire career if you want to. And then people really have to like the desert to live here. So we've had some successes and we've had some not successes with pulling people from around the country. People are really excited to get out here initially, and then they get married and start having kids, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, grandma and grandpa are in Massachusetts and I can't see them whenever I want. I mean, personally, I experienced that. My husband and my whole family lives on the East Coast, and during COVID it was like my kids aged 2 years. I had a baby in 2020, and my husband's family didn't meet him until he was 2. So I think the draw of being close to family. So we've kind of focused our efforts on people that are in the Southern California area, Southern Desert area, and recruiting from those schools more often, because we tend to find that if their families are close, they're going to stick around maybe a little bit longer.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, Kyle Fina from XP.
You gotta wait for that.
It's an awesome question. I'll tell you right now, having a personal conversation with Mr. Osborne and Dr. Waters. Dr. Waters' principal and number one priority is a human capital strategy that essentially goes out and looks for folks. It's an on-the-road show. We know there's a huge engineering gap in TENG, and as you pointed out, Chief, across maintenance and the other groups. So internally in XP, we're going to start assisting with some sort of human capital strategy plan. The idea really is to try and cultivate from the Mojave region and from other places to showcase the immense capacity and the concentrated capacity that is right here in terms of aerospace technologies and capabilities. You know, we have some of our senior educators here today that'll potentially help us out if we give them a good cross section of what we need. You did a great job laying most of those details out, as did you, Chief. The real issue is we've got to get our strategy on the road. Programs are moving so fast, and they're rapidly convergent on Edwards.
There is money everywhere.
Yeah,
throw money at us.
Yeah, that's exactly
We just
right.
can't get the manpower.
Yeah. So.
And I mean, our competition right down the road. If you work here, you live in Palmdale. If you could work at Plant 42 and make more money, like, we really have to sell why it's cool to be a civilian and not a contractor.
Yeah, so we've really got to put together, so the strategy really is, we've got to come up with a methodology where we target those shortfalls or those potential friction points in order to cultivate the appropriate workforces to, one, build what we were talking about earlier, but to sustain ourselves as we're bringing in the B-21 program and other programs. And again, you know, there's 10 other installations in the western region that are suffering from the same thing. We've got to get on the road, but I will tell you, Dan Osborne and Dr. Waters are after it.
So in the maintenance group, we have our own manpower office that go on road shows across the country. Another problem is the area. And so you can go around, but when you get on grade schools, if you have children, the schools are not that great here for grade school, right? The benefits of being a vet with 0% disability, great. I can send my kids to any state college or university for tuition free. But then you look at the crime rates in the AV. And so I'm gonna go back to the state of, if you wanna pull talent from the outside and have them come to the AV, you have to make it a premier place for people to wanna come to move here. Because people are willing to drive if they're close to home and have mom and dad. Ma'am, I'm in the same boat. I had my daughter in 2019. I was in Vegas, then I moved to Missouri, and the first time anybody in my family seen my daughter, my side of the family, was this past summer.
Yeah.
And so it's tough, but I'm used to that being in the military. But to raise my children here, you have to look at what people want from the outside to come here. And taxes are high compared to other states. And then you gotta look at crime, you gotta look at everything else, and what's gonna force people to drive 45 minutes to an hour and a half besides just the mission, because that's cool, but that's 8 to 12 hours out of the day. What are we doing the other 12 hours, right?
I mean, for me, what brought me here, because my husband and I both took pay cuts to come out to California. We lived in the Northeast. We worked for DoD contractors. I can pretty much remember within 3 months of starting my job right out of college, I graduated in 2008, they were having layoffs. And my peers told me, well, the company's investing in you, they're paying for your master's degree, you're probably safe, they're not gonna pay for your master's degree and then lay you off. But that constant fear is always in the back of your head as a contractor. And yes, there are things that happen in the government that are similar, but they are far less often. And so you have the job security, the benefits. I had a pension when I started at BAE Systems. Within a year, they took that away. That's still within something that we offer within civil service. TSP matching, the leave benefits that we have as civilians. Yeah.
And not just a cog in a machine, right?
One of the best things about coming here initially before COVID and like telework becoming more prevalent was that like when I left at the end of the day, nobody had my phone number. My flight chief had my phone number in case they needed to get a hold of me in an emergency, but I wasn't gonna get called in the middle of the night or at dinner time and say, hey, I need an answer to this, or I need you to do this. And that was awesome. So, I mean, with telework now, and I pushed to get a work phone for myself because during COVID with 2 small kids, getting sent home because daycare closed because your kid was exposed to COVID, like the easiest way for me to access email was on a phone. Like logging into a computer, checking my email, like if I could multitask during the day. So that's why I have one now, but still it's on vibrate, it stays in my purse when I'm at home. I don't check it and I'm not expected to check it. So I think that is something from my personal experience that separates my time as a government civilian from my time as a DoD contractor. Anything else? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Internet world.
So much, and offering that perspective of why to be here. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate you so much. So I can also attest, I came from a really long distance to come on out here in order to take on the job that I currently have. And let me tell you, I'm having fun every day. And yes, at 5 o'clock when it's quitting time, it is quitting time. I have more of a work-life balance now than I ever have before. So let me tell you, it's a good place to start, it's a good place to stay, and it's a good place to retire from. That's all we have today. Thanks for joining us, and you have a great Air Force Day.